When characters team up in our favorite comics, it's something to get excited about. And when our fave heroes and villains team up, you know you're getting a juicy story. A story that has a decent chance of concluding with someone's untimely end. Today we are counting down the top 10 superhero supervillain team-ups that ended in death. By ended in death we mean the team-up resulted in the death of one of these parties, others encountered during said team-up, or their opposition bit the dust. We also included a few exceptions with scenarios that resulted in equally traumatizing moments, like on par with death. So with that in mind, let's get to it. Also heads up friends, there's some minor spoilers for part of House of X on this list for one of our numbers in the latter half of the list. You've been warned. Starting us off in at number 10, Spider-Man and SATANA. This team-up occurred in a Marvel team-up comic. We're talking Marvel Team-Up issue 81 from 1979. We're talking Marvel Team-Up issue 81 from 1979. It saw Peter Parker's web-slinger teaming up with the daughter of Satan, SATANA. Creative name there, Satan. Not self-involved whatsoever. Anywho, this story, titled Last Rites, Doctor Strange finds himself manipulated by the Shiatra Book of the Damned, causing him to become an agent of Basilisk, turning him into a werewolf. Spider-Man has to track him down, and SATANA gets involved, with her mission being to restore Doctor Strange's soul to normal or kill him as a last resort if she fails. By the end of the team-up, SATANA is faced with a choice to either save her own life or save Strange's soul, and she ends up going with the Doctor's, which actually went over pretty well with fans because she wasn't a super overly popular character. And at number 9, the Micronauts and Baron KAZA. This one is kind of weird. It's a team up between the Micronauts and Baron KAZA. KAZA is kind of like a cross between an evil knight, Darth Vader, and a sad Doctor Doom impersonator. He's the former royal chief scientist of Homeworld, who used his technology to overthrow the monarchy of Homeworld, taking control of a large chunk of the microverse before his archenemies, the Micronauts, defeated him. Here we see an instance where they were on the same side though. And their foe? Professor Charles Xavier. The team-up took place during the X-Men Micronauts crossover series, with the unlikely coupling leading KAZA's fleet against a seemingly all-powerful entity. Turns out that this mysterious entity's power is traced to Charles Xavier. Spoiler alert, it's his dark side. And when they track him down at the X-Mansion, eventually this entity turns the mutants against the Micronauts, apparently kills a bunch of people, and Kitty Pryde and KAZA sort of accidentally switch bodies. Things get weirder and devolve into the entity trying to rape Kitty, who is actually KAZA, and this evil Xavier entity gets pervy with Danielle Moonstar to the point where he's actually psychically fondling her. Like, not even joking. The story ends with Xavier being the one who kills off the entity, although claims that the darkness inside of each of us is never fully gone, even when defeated. Ooh. Can we just talk about how an aspect of Xavier's personality just got real evil and pervy, and everyone was like totally cool with that, with him being like, I fixed it, don't worry guys, but it's still there deep down. Like, how are the X-Men not being like, yo, this is kind of Moving on to number 8, Doctor Doom and Namor. Namor, despite having quite antagonistic qualities, definitely qualifies as an anti-hero, so it should be no surprise that he was the hero side of this very first team-up in Marvel's Supervillain Teamup Volume 1, Issue 1. The story starts with Namor getting huffy and calling off their alliance, and then Doom moping around about it and being all like, I don't need a lackey, I need a friend. So he decides that he's going to try to recruit Namor one more time to convince him otherwise, but he's super sketch about it. He ends up using a tracking device disguised as a fish to follow Namor, because that's totally a way to rebuild the trust of an ally who just abandoned you. Despite this, they team up again and all is going fine and dandy until Namor witnesses Doom executing one of Atoma's defenseless lackeys in Supervillain Teamup Issue 3, causing the two of them to get into a big brawl in Supervillain Teamup Issue 4. Sometimes you just gotta reel it in a bit, Victor. Come on dude, just take a step back. Don't be weird about it. And at number 7, Adam Warlock and Thanos. Adam Warlock and Thanos have had a long-running history of being adversaries, but once upon a time the two actually worked together. In his earlier spacefaring days, Adam would come across the Universal Church of Truth, an intergalactic religious organization led by a villain named Magus. Teaming up with Pip the Troll, Gamora, and her adoptive papa Thanos, the group opposed Magus, and then discovered that Magus is actually a future version of Warlock who had traveled back in time and was forced insane by the use of his soul gem. With the Mad Titan's help, he travels into the future and steals his own soul in an attempt to prevent his evil self from ever existing, effectively killing himself. It wasn't until after all that Warlock and Thanos would clash, with Thanos getting his mitts on the other Infinity Gems to cause havoc. Moving on to number 6, Dracula and the X-Men. Dracula has a peculiar history with the members of the X-Men in both the 616 and alternate realities. In the 616 continuity, despite having an unruly past together, the mutant team and the infamous vamp team up in order to restore the world of vampires in Curse of the Mutants, a storyline that took place between 2010 and 2011. Blade was there too. Essentially, they were forced to work together when Dracula's irritable son, Zarus, engineered a biological weapon that converted regular humans into vampires on a large scale. While no one died permanently, Jubilee technically died and became a child of the night, having been turned into a vampire during one of Zarus' attacks. Dracula hooked her up with an amulet to help her manage sunlight as a thank you gesture for the X-Men's help, and thus began a very strange period in Jubilee's narratives. Side note, she was eventually cured for vampirism, but it was a weird stage. Moving on to number 5, Hank Pym and ULTRON. Oh, Hank. Oh, Hank. Come on, Hank. Hank Pym has had it rough. Most recently, he was manipulated by ULTRON, appearing to have merged with the robot after the Rage of ULTRON storyline. At first, it seemed as if it was a mutual decision, but as the story went on, it became clear that ULTRON was calling the shots and doing the driving, so to speak. It just seems that Hank can never truly control his creation, and his weird feelings of sentimentality towards his robotic son will always result in his downfall some way. The whole thing ended with Hank getting his soul devoured by a demonic entity that lives inside of the Soul Stone in Soul World, seemingly killing him. But we're pretty sure that he'll be back, and hopefully not just as a sentient robot skin jacket. Moving on to number 4, Galactus and Cosmic Ghost Rider. Frank Castle's Cosmic Ghost Rider hails from an alternate universe in which Thanos had won and killed off all of Earth's heroes. Now during that battle, Frank Castle hits his head via debris from the Hulk smashing into a building. He dies. He ends up in Hell, where he makes a deal with Mephisto to return, making him into Ghost Rider, but when he arrived back on Earth it was too late. Thanos was gone. He roamed the desolate planet and eventually encountered Galactus, who had come into conflict with Thanos. Castle would offer the World Devourer his services and become his herald, becoming the Cosmic Ghost Rider, or more simply, the Rider. They would travel the galaxy together for centuries in an attempt to stop Thanos' quest to kill every living being in the universe, but eventually Thanos confronted them and beheaded Galactus, then offered Castle another option. If he was the Mad Titan's servant instead, he could punish more evil than he'd ever imagine. There's more to the story from there, of course, but in terms of his relationship with Galactus, their partnership ended when the mighty entity's death occurred. Moving on to number 3, Avengers and KANG the Conqueror. This team up is slightly different than the others on our list. It involves trying to resurrect a character via a team up and then trying to kill one half of said team up unsuccessfully. Once upon a time, KANG the Conqueror teamed up with Earth's mightiest heroes, and it resulted in the death of the woman he loved. Or rather, she kinda just remained dead because they had previously kind of been responsible for her death and he was really sore about it, sort of. So in the Avengers issue 69, KANG goes to the Avengers and informs them that the Grandmaster has put him in a precarious position. If the Avengers can defeat the Grandmaster's champions, the Squadron Sinister, he'll give KANG the power of life over death, to resurrect Ravonna, KANG's love. Now for context, Ravonna was killed off prior when the Avengers and KANG clashed, having sacrificed herself in order to prevent KANG from being killed by a traitor. Now in this story, the Avengers won, but KANG gets foolish and uses his power to try to kill the Avengers instead, and fails to do so. Meaning he just kinda has to relive the pain of his love being dead again because he failed and it's his fault she's not alive this time. It's all very sad. And at number 2, Charles Xavier and Magneto in Dawn of X. Here's a case in which a team up effectively led to the fate of a character being worse than death. The new Dawn of X reboot of the X-Men franchise now sees Charles Xavier and his X-Men having had enough. They're done relying on the hope that humanity can learn to accept mutant kind, done with the oppression that they've dealt with for decades. Xavier ends up teaming up with Magneto, with the two of them primarily calling the shots with the new mutant sovereign nation that exists on Krakoa. This new sovereign state demands that mutants who have committed crimes are accountable by their mutant laws versus human laws out in the regular world, with one of these mutant laws being that they do not kill other mutants. Enter Sabretooth, who has been up to no good and is apprehended by the Fantastic Four outside of Krakoa. Cyclops shows up to take him to Krakoa for the mutants there to be the ones to decide his punishment. When Cyclops takes him over there, Xavier exiles Sabretooth, sending him into what he calls a stasis, deep inside of Krakoa. The ground opened up and Creed was dropped into it. Xavier claims that he'll be in there forever. I quote, "because that is how long mutant justice lasts." While he does note that Sabretooth might one day have the option to redeem himself, his fate is worse than any prison or death. To forever fall through the dark depths of a sentient creature for all of eternity? Yeah, yikes. That's like kinda savage, Xavier. You tolerate that, but you don't tolerate prisons? And finally, in at number 1, everybody during Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of the most prominent crossovers in DC history, and an impactful one to boot. Essentially, the purpose of this crossover was to reboot the DC multiverse and create a single unified DC universe. The story itself involved everyone in DC's roster, for the most part, getting involved to prevent the Anti-Monitor from completely destroying the multiverse. The Monitor, his good counterpart, tries to recruit heroes from across the multiverse to help, but is murdered. And then Brainiac tries to take advantage of the situation, but ultimately, in the end, all of the heroes and all of the villains are brought together by the Spectre to work together. Crisis is known for its surprisingly high death toll, killing off the likes of heroes such as Kara Zor-El and Barry Allen, along with hundreds of other lives that were lost in the process before Anti-Monitor was defeated. Alright, there we have it, friends. What other team-ups can you think of between heroes and villains that have resulted in the death of a character, or multiple characters? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know. If you guys dug this video, spread that love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more lists just like this one. In the meantime, thanks for watching, friends. I'll catch you all in the next video. Starting. Oh, ugh. Good for me for keeping up. Yeah, I was like. It's I feel like I said that like a game show host from 1979. Oh wow, I just scratched one of my eyebrows out. Adam would come across the universal truth.